Chapter 2631. Isn't the relationship between your family and Zephyr's family very close? You actually don't know about this. Leah did not answer and only stared at Zephyr and Roxy, who were walking toward them. Roxy saw Leah as well and instantly wrapped her arms around Zephyr's as if she was showing her domination. Miss Yunch, what a coincidence. Zephyr looked at Leah but did not say a thing. Yeah, what a coincidence. Leah nodded politely. She then picked up her wine glass and took a sip as if she did not want to talk to Roxy anymore. Several classmates could not help but feel a little strange when they saw the interaction between the three of them. One of their classmates glanced at Zephyr and asked, "Zephyr, is this your girlfriend?" Zephyr did not answer, but Roxy responded to the question almost instantly. "Yes, Zeph and I have been dating for a while already." Zeph. All the classmates present knew Daisy Vanderbilt from the Goldmans, and all of them also knew that Daisy had had a very close relationship with Zephyr back then. Zephyr had been taking very special care of Daisy, and any observant person would know that Zephyr had a thing for her. And Zeph was the nickname that Daisy used to address Zephyr back then. After looking at Roxy's appearance, the ladies more or less understood something. One of them laughed all of a sudden, and no one knew if she did so intentionally or unintentionally. "I see. I heard that Daisy has gotten married. Zephyr, I didn't expect you to have not forgotten her after so many years." Her response caused Roxy's expression to dim instantly. "I know I've always been a stand-in, but I hate being reminded of this fact." "But why isn't Zeph saying anything? He's not even explaining our relationship for my sake. Doesn't this just go on to prove that I'm only a stand-in?" Roxy bit her lip but immediately suppressed her emotions and smiled. "Oh really, Miss Vanderbilt has gotten married, and Zeph met me after that. Perhaps this is what we humans call fate." The female classmate gave off a pregnant smirk as if she was mocking the fact that a stand-in would be shameless enough to think so highly of herself. "However, I heard that Miss Yunge also had a crush on Zephyr for so many years, right?" Roxy's words directed the gazes of all the people around her onto Leah. They did not know about Leah's crush on Zephyr. They only knew that the Goslings had a good relationship with the Yunges. Zephyr and Leah were classmates in the past, and the two had been very close. Later on, Daisy appeared in their lives through Zephyr, and the three of them became almost inseparable. Everyone around them could see that Zephyr liked Daisy back then, but they did not know that Leah liked Zephyr too. In other words, it was Leah who had hidden her affection for Zephyr so deeply that no one noticed. Just what kind of love triangle is this? Leah pinched the stem of the glass tightly, and her expression turned chilly. She glared at Roxy, and Roxy looked at her with a trace of provocation beaming from the bottom of her eyes. After some time, Leah chuckled. "But that's all in the past. I let go of it a long time ago." Leah admitted it on the spot. Now that she was claiming that she had let go of the past, it meant that she was no longer secretly in love with him. Leah's classmate asked at that moment, "When did it happen? Why didn't we know about it?" Leah glanced at Zephyr and answered calmly, "I started to take a fancy to Zephyr after he fell for Daisy. The way he treated Daisy and took care of her were very attractive to me because all the things that he did show that he was a person who was capable of a long-lasting relationship." Zephyr froze slightly. She finished the wine in the glass, stared at the glass, and added calmly, "But that was all in the past. Things are different now. I already have a boyfriend." Everyone around was shocked. Even Roxy was dumbfounded, but she reacted very quickly. "Miss Yunge, are you messing with us?" Chapter 2632. Doesn't she have a crush on Zephyr, so much so that she will die without him? She's obviously a dunderhead when she falls for someone, so how could she have a change of heart in the blink of an eye? She must feel too embarrassed to admit it, so she's just finding an excuse to prevaricate and change the subject. "Do you think that I'm joking? Too bad I'm not someone who loves to make jokes." Leah took her phone out, scrolled through her contact list, searched for a number, and brought the phone to her ear. "Please pick up the call. At least show me a tad bit of respect." After a long time, the other party picked up the call and greeted her languidly. "Hello." Leah walked aside and answered the call with a smile, turning her back to them with a slightly stiff expression. Honey, have you just woken up? As soon as the other party heard the word, honey, he instantly lost all desire to sleep. He sat up immediately, glanced at the caller ID on the screen, and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. Who are you? Leah lowered her voice. Can't you recognize my voice, Mr. Shaw? She turned her head and waved to her classmates with a smile, then turned around and continued to speak on the phone. This is an emergency. Morrison scratched his hair and looked at the clock on the wall. An emergency? Have you lost your mind? Don't you know that I haven't adjusted to my jet lag recently? Do you know that you're disturbing my sleep? Please, I can pay you for your effort, just come and put up a show with me. You can then do whatever you like after that. I promise I won't bother you again. Morrison took a deep breath. Woman, knowing you is really bad luck for me. Send me your address. After saying that, Morrison hung up the call immediately, got out of bed, and walked straight toward the bathroom. Leah clenched her phone, heaved a sigh of relief, turned around, and walked toward her classmates. He just woke up and is rushing over now. Sorry that I've forgotten to introduce him to you guys. Leigh, do you really have a boyfriend already? Since when? Leah reminisced solemnly. I think I should categorize it as a chance encounter. At first, I didn't even know his name and contact information, but after meeting him several times, I think I've scored a lucky hit by a fluke. I found out that he was quite a good man, so I tried to ask him out on a date. It turns out that he's a very considerate person. Leah had not lied about anything in her life, except that she did not have a thing for Zephyr and her love for Morrison. Upon seeing how devoted she was when she was explaining her relationship with Morrison to her classmates, everyone took it seriously and thought it was real. Roxy laughed at this time. It's obvious that you are still. Zephyr interrupted her out of the blue. Is he the man who sent you back the other day? Roxy was stunned, turned to Zephyr, and stared at him. Why would he ask Leah about the man? Does he know anything? Leah did not deny it. Yes, I've gotten together with him. Zephyr frowned. Don't you think you're even more ridiculous? You haven't even known him long enough. Leah laughed out loud. Why am I the ridiculous one? It just so happened that I fell in love with him. People change, don't they? She refuted with what he had said to her before that. Roxy felt a little upset deep down. What is Zephyr doing? Now that Leah has a date and will stop pestering him, isn't this a good thing? 20 minutes later, Leah saw a figure stepping into the venue, and before Morrison could find her, she shouted with a grin, honey. Just as Morrison turned his head, he saw a woman dashing toward her. Just as he was about to push her away, Leah grabbed him by his shoulders and whispered, start acting. I'll pay you more for that. You. Seeing that she was too close, Morrison straightened his posture, and his body stiffened. Okay. Just stand properly. Leigh, is he your boyfriend? Why haven't we met him before? Leah cleared her throat. He just came back to Zalakova from abroad, so that's why you haven't seen him before. Chapter 2633. Roxy recognized the man standing in front of the group. Isn't he the man from the cafe the other day? Yes. Leah turned to look at Roxy. We got together at that time. We only did so to expose your coffee shower performance, so he was only pretending not to know me. Roxy's expression completely changed. Morrison wrapped his arm around Leah's shoulders, blending himself into the play very quickly. Yo, are they your friends? Classmates. Oh, your classmates. Hey guys, how are you doing? Morrison greeted everyone present with a smile. Leah's classmates responded to his greeting, treating him more enthusiastically than how they had treated Roxy. Morrison then took a glance at Zephyr and Roxy. Oh, these two look familiar. I've seen you before. Zephyr's expression dimmed. Yes. Roxy did not dare to speak, for fear that Morrison would expose her for what happened the other day, but she was reluctant to admit defeat without putting up a fight and asked preemptively, Mister, are you really Miss Yunja's boyfriend? Morrison immediately gave off a disgusted expression. Why would you ask such a question? Are you planning to court and snatch me from her? If that's the case, let me clarify that you're not my cup of tea. Before you do something awkward in front of everybody. Oh yeah, by the way, the pouring your own coffee on yourself performance that you played in the cafe was brilliant. He really brought up the incident, causing Roxy's expression to turn pale. One of Leah's classmates asked, "What's with the whole pouring your own coffee on yourself thing?" Morrison took a glance at Leah. "Oh, some random woman poured coffee on herself and blamed it on my girl in order to make a scene in a cafe. Oh my god, she actually did such a thing." Listening to what the people around her were talking about, Roxy trembled with anger and finally left in tears. Zephyr took a glance at Leah and Morrison and then caught up to Roxy. The discussions happening among the classmates gradually subsided after they left the scene. It was not until the ceremony was over that Leah walked out of the venue and saw Morrison standing in front of his car, drinking coffee and waiting for her. Seeing her approaching him, he stretched out his hand. "What about my fee?" Leah took out her purse and realized that she did not have enough cash. "I'll transfer it to you via Google Pay." Morrison looked back at her, scoffed, and crossed his arms. "Are you planning to get my Google account now?" Leah froze in place and lifted her head. "But I don't have enough cash." "How much do you have now?" $25.50. Upon hearing this amount, Morrison's eyes widened in disbelief. Is this how much cash the daughter of a wealthy family brings on her when she goes out? Who goes out with stacks of cash nowadays? Leah thought about something and said, "Then just generate a QR code using any of the e-wallets, and I'll scan your code and pay you via an online transfer." Morrison took out his cell phone and showed her all the applications he had installed. "Unfortunately, I don't use any local e-wallets." "Why don't you use any of them?" He smiled. "Miss, I've been living abroad and traveling a lot all these years, so why would I own an e-wallet? I'll put this in my book first, so remember to have some cash on you the next time we meet." After saying that, Morrison got into his car and left. All the way in Stoslow, Cameron slowly woke up, realized that she had gotten into a car from the plane, and sat up instantly. "Are we here already?" Waylon was leaning back in his seat and reading a magazine. When he saw that she had woken up, he chuckled. "You've finally woken up." She was a little bewildered at that moment. "Aren't we on the plane?" Waylon lifted the curtains of the car, and the surroundings became bright instantly. Cameron looked out of the car. The buildings around them had classical architecture and glamorous exteriors, the streets were spacious, and the pedestrians walking by the car had well-defined facial features. Their skin color looked different, and their faces looked exotic. "I tried to wake you up on the plane, but you refused to wake up, so I had to carry you down from the plane." "Carry?" Cameron's expression froze. She could already imagine the expressions of those people around them when Waylon carried her out of the airport. She let off a wry smile. "That must be embarrassing." "It was all right." Waylon closed the magazine and glanced at her. "People almost thought you had passed out on the plane, and the ground crew was about to call an ambulance for you." Chapter 2634. The corner of Cameron's mouth twitched. She leaned against the back of the seat and did not speak anymore. "Thank God I didn't wake up. I actually managed to avoid such an embarrassing scene." When the car arrived at the villa, bodyguards opened the doors for them, and Waylon and Cameron got out of the car together. She looked around at the resort-like villa in front of her, which even had a private swimming pool. Mr. Goldman, a tall, well-tanned man, came out of the villa and hugged Waylon with a smile. "You've come back." "Where's that kid, Morrison? Didn't he come back with you?" Waylon patted him on the shoulder. "He hasn't had enough fun in Zilakova, so he doesn't want to come back just yet." The man then took a glance at Cameron. "Could this be?" Waylon introduced Cameron to him. "She's my wife." The man was shocked. "I heard from Morrison that you found yourself a lady, but I didn't expect it to be true. You even got married while you were back in Zilakova." Waylon brought Cameron into the villa with him, and one of the servants in the house went in, brewed a pot of tea, and brought it to the living room. The man chatted with Waylon in the living room. Cameron found out that the man's name was Damon during the conversation, and he seemed to be one of the members of the night banquet. Waylon asked him, "How's my great-grandfather doing now?" Damon replied, "Master Hernandez's health isn't as good as it was before, and his daughter, grandson, and granddaughter-in-law are all by his side now." Cameron sat down beside Waylon and leaned closer to him. "You actually have another great-grandfather." This fella has so many relatives. Waylon turned his head to look at her, raised his hand, and rubbed the top of her head. I'll bring you to see him tomorrow. Damon was a little surprised. After all, having known Waylon for so many years, it was his first time seeing him speak so gently to a woman. It seems that Master Wayne really likes this woman a lot, so much so that he's made her his wife. Willie, I heard that you're back. Why didn't you let me know about your return in advance? A woman with a gorgeous face and a glamorous dress came in. Damon was momentarily astounded. He then slowly got up. Miss Woods. Evelyn walked straight toward Waylon, but she was slightly taken aback when she saw the woman sitting right next to Waylon. Willie, who is she? How could this woman sit so close to Willie? Cameron took a closer look at the woman standing in front of her, and just as Morrison had described. She was indeed very beautiful. Her facial features looked extremely chiseled, the pupils of her eyes had a light hue, and her fair skin complexion and platinum blonde hair made her look like a Barbie doll. Evelyn smiled brightly. Ah, I see, you must be Willie's younger sister, right? She remembered that Waylon had a biological sister. Damon was slightly embarrassed. Miss Woods, she's actually not. She's my wife, Waylon responded to her question. What Waylon said made Evelyn's expression change slightly. She's your wife. You've gotten married. Waylon nodded. Yes, we're legally married, and our wedding ceremony is scheduled for spring. Damon chuckled to ease the atmosphere. Oh, will the ceremony be held in Zilakova or Stoslo? Waylon smiled. It'll most probably be in Zilakova. You can come over if you're free. Damon replied instantly, all right, I'll surely free up some time and travel to Zilakova with Morrison. Evelyn lowered her head and did not utter a single word as if she had been excluded. They're talking about the wedding ceremony in front of me. Am I the only one who thinks that this is ridiculous? Why did he get married all of a sudden? Willie, are you serious about your marriage? Damon had already accepted the fact, but Evelyn was still in denial and thought it was impossible. Damon walked up to Evelyn. Miss Woods. Surely Master Wayne wouldn't joke with us. Evelyn ignored him, she only wanted to hear it from Waylon himself. Chapter 2635. Cameron sipped her tea silently as if it had nothing to do with her, but she could hear the sound of a woman's heart shattering into smithereens. Waylon answered her question firmly. I wouldn't joke about my marriage, so of course, I'm serious this time around. But you claimed that you wouldn't get married so soon, and it might even be impossible for you to meet your Mises right too. That was what he said to me before he left. At that time, Evelyn had confessed to Waylon and courted him, but he had rejected her. Thus, she had asked him about the kind of woman that he was attracted to. He had told her that the woman he would take a fancy to had not appeared yet, and he might never have the chance to meet her. She had fallen for him for so long, and he had always been so dull and slow-witted when it came to romantic affairs and treated every woman around him exactly the same. But at least she had been under the impression that she had a chance because there were very few women around him and because she had known him since college. As such, as long as no other women were to appear around him, she was sure to change his mind eventually. And now that he had finally come back, all she got was the news that he was already married. That was before, but I've run into her. Waylon chuckled and looked at Cameron after saying that. Evelyn's voice trembled. Is she the one who took the initiative to court you, to begin with? No, he laughed. I'm the one who courted her. To Evelyn, this sentence was really heart-wrenching. She had always thought that Waylon was not a man who would take the initiative when it came to courtship, but it turned out that his attitude depended on the person he was dealing with. Evelyn bit her lip, turned around, and left. Damon chased after her to the entrance of the villa. Miss Woods. Unfortunately, she had already gone far. He turned back. Master Wayne, Miss Woods may not be able to accept this temporarily, but I believe that she will think it through. Waylon smiled and did not utter a single word. After Damon left, Waylon glanced at Cameron, who had been drinking tea and had not said anything. Is there anything wrong? Cameron stared at him and forced a smile. From now on, there will be one more devastated person in this city. Why should I care if she is hurt or not? Waylon moved to her side and got even closer to her. If I were to have cared about her, wouldn't you be sad? Cameron choked on her own words but placed the teacup to her lips and took a sip of tea. I thought that people in Stoslow had the habit of drinking strong alcohol, so why does your family drink tea? Wayland smiled. Do you want to do as the Romans do? I'll drink with you tonight if you want to grab some drinks. No, thank you, I've quit drinking. Wayland took her into his arms and gave off a faint smile. Drinking is definitely not a suitable habit if you're prepping your body for pregnancy. The next day, Wayland brought Cameron to the De Arma mansion. The butler was a little surprised when he saw him. Are you, Mr. Goldman? Wayland nodded. The butler invited them into the house, told them to take a seat, and then went upstairs. Not long after, a man came down from upstairs. It was Louis. Didn't you go back to Zelakova? Why did you come back all of a sudden? Wayland said, I've brought my wife back here to visit you guys. Where's Yvette? Yvette was Louis and Riley's son. He's gone out shopping with your Aunt Riley. Louis walked to the couch, sat down, and looked at Cameron. It seems that you're that fearless niece-in-law of mine. Fearless? Cameron let off an awkward smile. I'm not as fearless as it. Z mentioned it to Riley many times, and I have always wanted to go back and have a look. Wayland took a glance upstairs. How's my great-grandfather doing? It's his stomach. He can only eat light and easy to digest food now. Plus, he was injured way back then, so he's also suffering from rheumatism now, especially when it rains. Chapter 2636. Wayland lowered his gaze, and waves of thoughts surged in his mind. Louis poured himself a cup of tea. That's normal when humans get old. It's only natural for their bodies to weaken as time goes by. Wayland stood up. I'll bring Cameron upstairs to meet him. Louis nodded. When they came to Hernandez's room and pushed open the door, they saw Hernandez leaning on the bed and reading a newspaper with a band-aid taped on the back of his hand as if he had just finished his IV injection. Grandfather, Wayne has come to see you. Louis walked to the bed. Hernandez raised his head and closed the newspaper, and his voice did not sound as strong as it had been before. Wayne. Wayland sat by the bed. Great-grandpa, I've brought your great-granddaughter-in-law here to see you. Hernandez nodded. I know that each of you three little rascals have settled down and formed your own families. I'm very pleased about the news. However, I don't think I'll be able to attend your wedding ceremony and banquet already. It's truly a pity. Wayland held the back of his hand. It's okay. All you need to do now is take good care of your health. He chuckled. I think this body of mine isn't going to last much longer already. But that's just life, isn't it? I've already gotten over it. Great-grandpa, all right. Hernandez patted the back of Wayland's hand, interrupting what he was about to say. Stop worrying too much about me already. Life goes on, so I hope you guys all the best moving forward. Wayland's eye sockets twitched, and he nodded. Wayland and Cameron stayed behind for a while before leaving the residence. After sending them off, Louis went back to Hernandez's room. Grandfather. Hernandez waved his hand and motioned him to come to his side. Louis, when the day I'm no longer around comes, remember to hand this will to Z. The Lucases can't be without an heir, so Yvette will one day return to the Lucases. As for the De Armas, I talked to Z about choosing one of the sons of the three Rugrats as the heir of our family. The future of the De Armas will rely solely on that child. Louis took the will into his hand and pursed his lips. You have my word. Hernandez smiled. Good. Thank you for not telling Wayne that my illness is already beyond cure. I don't want them to worry too much. While they were on their way back, Wayland kept looking out of the car window. Seeing that he had not uttered a word since they left the manor, Cameron remained silent and only asked after a moment of silence, Your great-grandfather, he'll surely recover, right? Wayland withdrew his gaze and lowered it. It's difficult to tell. I actually don't believe what my uncle told us earlier. I don't believe that great-grandpa is only suffering from some chronic illnesses like gastric or rheumatism. He looks a lot more haggard than before. It seems that he's suffering from a serious illness. He even needs infusions for his daily nutrition intake. Ordinary gastric problems and rheumatism shouldn't be grave enough to cause someone to need infusions at home. Cameron leaned into the seat. My father said that it's an achievement for someone to be able to live to the fullest up until the end of their life. Whenever someone is found to have lived for too long, diseases will start to knock on their door, reminding them that it's time to grab a good, long rest. After saying that, Cameron smiled. Are these even something that one would say to comfort others? It's obviously dark humor. However, we can't change anything about it. Everyone will eventually watch as their relatives leave the world behind one after another. All we can do is live on with their beliefs. And when the time comes for us to pass too, the beliefs will then be passed on to our children, and then from them to their children, and so on and so forth. This is just life. Seeing that Waylon did not speak, Cameron curled her lips. I'm not really good at comforting others. Just treat it as me getting my own emotions off my shoulders. You don't have to take it too seriously. She then turned her head and saw that Waylon was leaning on the back of the seat with his eyes closed. She stretched out her hand and waved it right in front of his eyes. Wayne? He did not respond, as if he had really fallen asleep. Chapter 2637. Cameron stopped bothering Waylon anymore. Cameron sat up straight and gave him a shoulder to lean his head against because he was not sleeping soundly. When they arrived at the villa, the driver and the bodyguard were about to wake up Waylon, but Cameron shushed them with a finger to her lips. The driver and bodyguard did not wake Waylon up in the end. Cameron stayed with him in the car, and no one knew how long it took before Waylon finally woke up and saw that Cameron had also fallen asleep with her head tilted. Cameron woke up in a daze just as he was about to touch her. I thought you were going to sleep until night. Waylon smiled helplessly. Why didn't you wake me up? Cameron rubbed her sore shoulder. I didn't want to disturb you. Waylon got out of the car first. Waylon abruptly picked Cameron up when she got out and brought her into the house. Willie, I've made you some Eurasian food. Unexpectedly, Evelyn was there in the villa, and she even used the kitchen to cook lunch for Waylon. When she saw Waylon coming in with Cameron in his arms, her expression froze for a split second. Waylon frowned slightly. Why are you here? I was worried that you would skip lunch, and I used to come over to make lunch for you and Morrison back then. The helpers in the villa knew about it, so they did not stop her from entering the villa and using the kitchen. In the past, Evelyn had the habit of coming over to make lunch for them. Besides, she could come in and out of the villa as she wanted before this, and Waylon had not said anything about that. Cameron suddenly came down from Waylon's arms. I just so happened to be hungry too, and I was rather bothered by the fact that I might have to make lunch, so why don't we eat together? Waylon frowned, but Cameron had already walked up to the dining table and glanced at the lunchbox on the table. This is very well cooked. I'll give it a try. Seeing that Cameron really picked the food up and took a bit out of it, Evelyn pursed her lips. I clearly prepared it for Willie. Not you. She then looked at Waylon. Willie, then I'll prepare another set for you. Waylon declined. Thank you, but there's no need for that. I'm not hungry. Cameron grabbed the sandwich into her hands, walked up to Waylon, and held it right next to his mouth with a grin. At least give it a try. After all, Miss Woods has spent all her time making you lunch. Waylon was at a loss for words. Is she serious? Cameron gave off a brilliant smile. Just a nibble. Evelyn felt a little uncomfortable seeing that Waylon ate what Cameron fed him but refused to eat lunch when she offered to make an extra portion for him. Cameron blinked. How is it? Is it delicious? He replied indifferently. Aren't all sandwiches the same? They taste the same, don't they? Evelyn could not stand it anymore. She lowered her gaze and left the villa. Then I'll take my leave first. She threw down her apron and was about to leave, but Waylon stopped her. She thought that Waylon had something to say to her, so she turned around with a smile. What's the matter? You don't have to come to make lunch in the future anymore. We have helpers here. Upon hearing him utter those words, Evelyn was astonished. Does this mean that I'm being forbidden from coming over here ever again? Waylon had already gone upstairs with Cameron. Waylon pushed Cameron against the wall in the bedroom and loosened his collar. Is it delicious? Cameron took the last bite of the sandwich and swallowed it. It's all right. It's just a little dry. He wiped away the sauce stain on the corner of her lips with his fingertips. How are you so bad? Cameron looked up at him and smiled. How am I the bad one among the two of us? She worked so hard to make you lunch, and you only said to her, "Thank you, but there's no need for that." I'm not hungry. However, when I asked you to give it a taste, you ate it immediately without any hesitation. You're way worse than me. Cameron imitated him rather well, and it made him laugh. He lowered his head and gave her a peck. Because it's food my wife handed me, so me eating it is the only right thing to do. Chapter 2638. Wayne. Cameron slumped against the wall, clutching his shoulders tightly, while Waylon picked her up. A bead of sweat rolled down from the bridge of her nose and stopped on the tip of her nose. In the middle of the night, Waylon was woken up by a phone call. He grabbed his phone and took a glimpse at the caller ID. It was Evelyn. He frowned and answered the call. It's so late already. What's the matter? Willie, save me, please let me go. Evelyn cried for help from the other end of the call, and a few other men's voices could be heard from the background. Waylon frowned. Where are you? Hoo, I'm in the 6th alley. Willie, please come quickly. The call was then hung up. Cameron woke up at that moment, opened her eyes, and asked in a daze, who is it? Waylon leaned over and kissed her forehead. It's Evelyn. She seems to have been caught in the middle of some trouble. I have to get someone to get to her. After saying that, he called Damon, but no one picked up the phone call. Cameron lost all drowsiness and sat up from the bed. Don't wait for anyone's response already. Saving her is the most important thing now. I'll go with you. Waylon smiled. Okay. On the other end of the previous phone call, in the 6th alley, Evelyn handed a debit card to one of the men. When he arrives, you're to hold me hostage and make sure that it looks realistic. You must also cut me with a knife, do you understand that? The man took the card and glanced at the pretty-looking woman standing in front of him. He did not expect this woman to be this rich. She even offered them such high pay just to get them to play along with her drama. This woman is really ruthless, so ruthless that she would do such a thing to herself. However, as long as she would pay them, it was only natural for those men to play along with her willingly. Of course, we'll surely do as ordered. Evelyn clenched her phone tightly. Willie will surely come to my rescue since something happened to me, just like what he would do when I got bullied back in college. As long as Willie comes to save me and sees that I've been injured, he'll definitely take me to the hospital. And when that happens, I'll be able to take advantage of my injury to hang around him. Hearing the sound of the car's engine, Evelyn knew that someone was there, and she immediately asked the men to start putting up a show. When Waylon and Cameron got out of the car, they heard Evelyn's cry coming from the alley. Please let me go. I'll give you anything. Please don't hit me. Stop. Waylon stopped the men. They turned to look at the approaching man. Who are you? Mind your own business. This is none of your business, so fuck off. Willie, Evelyn shivered behind them with a pitiful expression. Why bullshit with him? Just do it, and it'll be over real soon. Cameron walked out from behind Waylon at this time, and Evelyn was stunned by her appearance. Why is she here? Nothing matters now, anyway. We've already started the play, and it's come to this point. As long as I'm injured, Willie will never ignore me and leave me here. The man pulled Evelyn up, grabbed her by the hair, and stuck a dagger to her cheek. Oh, you're here for the damsel in distress, huh? If you don't want to see her beautiful face, get disfigured, I strongly advise you to just walk away. Evelyn's expression looked terrified. Willie, just go. Just leave me here. Waylon's face dimmed, and he did not utter a word. Cameron picked up a stone from the ground and threw it into the air. I really can't watch this anymore. She threw the stone in her hand toward the man who was holding Evelyn hostage. The stone hit the man's head, and the man was caught off guard and fell backward. The other men were astounded, including Evelyn. Cameron suddenly made a move on those men, knocking all of them down in just a few moves. From the beginning to the end, Waylon did not even move. Evelyn was stunned. Why didn't things turn out as I imagined? Chapter 2639. Miss Woods, do you still want to stay here? Cameron turned to look at Evelyn, who was frozen in place. Only then did Evelyn come back to her senses and quickly ran to Waylon's side. "Willie, I was really scared. Thank you for coming to save me." Waylon responded indifferently, "The person who saved you is Cameron. She's the one who you should thank." Evelyn choked on her own words, then glanced in Cameron's direction and reluctantly said, "Thank you." Cameron came up to the two of them. "You're welcome. As for these bastards, we'll just hand them over to the police." "No." Evelyn became nervous instantly. "If they hand them over to the police, I'll be found out." Seeing Cameron and Waylon's suspicious looks, she quickly explained, I mean, they haven't caused me any harm, and you guys have saved me too, so let's just forget it. Anyway, they won't dare to do so again." Cameron scoffed. "You do you." She then returned to the car. Waylon was about to leave too, but Evelyn held him back. "Willie, can you send me home? I'm scared." Waylon removed her hand from his arm. "The driver will send you back. And if you encounter such an incident again in the future, just call the police." Seeing his indifferent attitude, Evelyn could not help but feel flustered. Did he realize anything? That's impossible. He's only acting so unconcernedly to me because that woman is here. Cameron crossed her arms, looking extremely upset when they were on their way back. Waylon stretched out his hand, pulled her into his arms, and grinned. "What's wrong with my wife? Don't you find it strange that an ordinary woman was found in such a place by herself in the middle of the night?" Waylon stroked the ends of her hair. "Do you have anything to say about that?" Cameron turned to look at him. "Please don't tell me that you've failed to discover such an obvious flaw." Waylon narrowed his eyes and smiled. "I thought you only came with me because you wanted to save her." "She called you here to save her. How could I just stand by and watch? Besides, she's your friend, so I didn't want you to blame yourself if something were to happen to her." After saying that, Cameron snorted. "But, of course, I don't believe that something actually happened to her. When such an incident happens, why would the inflictors allow the victims to call for help and tell others where they are? If they only dragged her to the alley because they wanted to make some extra cash, they would have only brought her to a bank and gotten her to withdraw all her money. If they want to rape her instead, how many rapists would be able to wait until we came to her rescue? It took us some time to get there. Even if Evelyn had the chance to ask for help, everything would have almost been over by the time we arrived at the scene. What's more, Evelyn was safe and sound when we arrived. Apart from being held hostage, she didn't even have a scratch on her. That's way too fake. In addition, she didn't want us to call the police. It's obvious that she didn't want those men to fall into the hands of the police. That's such a huge flaw. Only a blind and dumb person can't see it." Waylon hugged her into his arms. "It seems that my wife is indeed very smart." Cameron looked up at him. "You actually knew that it was all fake." "I was already skeptical when she called me, but I had to come and check it myself for safety's sake." Waylon's gaze looked gloomy. "If you could see it, how could I not? But I really didn't expect her to turn to such a childish method." After confirming that Evelyn was directing the whole scheme and playing it herself, Waylon was really disappointed. "I rejected her in the past, so it will be futile no matter what she does. But to think that she actually turned to this method, it goes to show that she's extremely naive." Cameron crossed her arms. "It seems that the belle from your college isn't going to give up on you so easily. Anyway, this is all your business, so I won't do anything about it anymore in the future." Chapter 2640. Waylon kissed Cameron on the cheek. "Don't worry, I know what to do." The next day, Damon came to the villa to look for Waylon. Waylon asked him why he did not answer his phone call last night, and Damon was stunned by his question. "I lost my phone last night." Waylon raised his gaze and stared at him. "You lost it?" "Yes, Miss Woods invited me to a bar for a drink last night. And it was rather late when we finished drinking, so I sent her back and found out that my cell phone had gone missing after that." Waylon took a sip of coffee. "If you're the one who sent her back, did you make sure that she got home safely?" Damon nodded. "Yes, I left only after seeing her enter the house with my own eyes." "What's wrong?" Waylon put down the cup of coffee and smiled. She called me last night and told me that she had run into some thugs in the 6th alley. Damon was shocked. How's that possible? I had already sent her home. Could it be that she went out again last night? And is she okay now? It's okay. Cam and I went out there and resolved the issue. Waylon got up slowly and walked to the window. By the way, don't let her come to the villa so casually in the future. I have a wife now, and I don't want my wife to misunderstand anything. Damon paused for a few seconds before nodding. Okay, I'll let her know. Damon left the villa and happened to run into Evelyn while he was on his way, and that was when Evelyn stepped forward and returned his phone to him. He froze on the spot. Why is my phone with you? Sorry, I accidentally took your phone last night. I was so drunk and confused. Damon took the phone from her and responded with a smile, it's okay. Thank you for bringing it to me personally. After saying that, he remembered something. By the way, did you go out again last night? Master Wayne said that you ran into some thugs. Evelyn knew that Waylon would definitely tell Damon about the incident, and she had already come up with an explanation. Yes, I found an extra cell phone in my handbag when I got home last night, so I guessed I had taken yours by mistake. I was planning to send it back to you. I never thought that I would run into such an incident. Evelyn gave off an expression of lingering fear. If it weren't for Willie, I'm afraid that I would've. Damon was stunned, as if he did not expect her to actually go out again because she wanted to return his cell phone, and that was most probably how she had gotten targeted by those thugs. Miss Woods, you don't have to do this next time. It's dangerous to go out at night, but thank you anyway. Seeing that Damon believed her words, she agreed verbally, so she asked again, did Willie tell you anything else? Damon was a little embarrassed when he thought of something else. Miss Woods, Master Wayne also said that you shouldn't visit the villa as frequently as you did in the past from now on. That's because he has a wife now and is concerned about what his wife thinks. There's no need for you to overthink it. Damon comforted her for a bit before he left. Evelyn stood in place, astonished, and the expression on her face dimmed. How did it turn out like this? At Yarramore, at the headquarters of Tom's film, Freya, Norman, a Zelokovian director, and other staff of the crew were discussing the casting of the film. Donnie was also quite an influential personnel in Dorywood, and he had directed many outstanding and award-winning suspense blockbusters, such as The Horrific Lover, Signals, and The Maid. These were all his masterpieces. The movie, Signals, was crowned the best movie in many Zelokovian-speaking regions back then, and the actors that got cast were all Zelokovian. This film was also the film that officially paved the path toward the international film industry for Helios Busha. After submitting the materials, Norman was chatting with Donnie. After some time, Donnie announced, if no one else has any requirements to put forward, I suggest that we film this project in the port area of Zelakova, which would better help integrate our cast into the background of the script.